They were here long before we understood how complex history truly is. An ancient people who left no known language, no written records, and no descendants to speak their name. They didn't build vast cities like the Maya or craft massive stone heads like the Olmec, yet their genetic fingerprints remain, hidden in the deepest corners of the Americas past. For years, archaeologists and historians believed the story of early human migration into the New World was relatively straightforward. A single wave of humans descended from Siberian hunter-gatherers, crossed the Barren Land Bridge during the last ice age and spread southward. They became the ancestors of today's Native Americans. But what if that story is incomplete? What if it misses an entire group of people laying ancient lineage completely unrelated to Native Americans that once lived, thrived, and mysteriously vanished? This isn't fiction. Recent breakthroughs in ancient DNA analysis are rewriting everything we thought we knew about who first inhabited the Americas. Buried deep in the genomes of a few unearthed skeletal remains, scientists have detected genetic signatures that simply do not match those of modern Native American groups. These remains, found in remote cave systems and high-altitude burial sites, belong to people who lived thousands of years ago. And astonishingly, their DNA points to a genetic origin that seems far older, more divergent, and completely separate from the mainline Native American ancestry. Some researchers are calling this a ghost population, a term used in genetics to describe a lineage that has no direct living descendants but left behind traces in ancient genomes. These people weren't just different. They may have arrived by an entirely different route. What's most perplexing is how these mysterious individuals ended up in the Americas at all. One theory suggests they may have come from a long-forgotten migration wave, possibly traveling along the Pacific coast thousands of years before the widely accepted Clovis culture emerged. But their origins seem to go back even further, perhaps linked to populations in Australasia. That's right! A small but unmistakable portion of their DNA appears more closely related to modern indigenous groups from places like Papua New Guinea, Australia, and the Andaman Islands than to any Siberian or Native American lineages. An essay finding so shocking that some geneticists initially thought it had to be a lab error. But after multiple tests, the results held. There really were people in ancient America with a genetic connection to the distant lands of Oceania. Imagine the implications of that. Thousands of years ago, long before Columbus, before the Vikings, even before the Clovis hunters on, ancient people with no apparent ties to Native Americans made it to the American continents. They left behind few bones, no permanent settlements we've yet discovered, and almost no cultural artifacts that we can clearly link to them. And then they disappeared. Who were they? How did they get here? And what happened to them? The genetic evidence comes largely from remains found in Brazil and Mexico. In particular, the famous 11,500-year-old skeleton known as Luzia woman, found in a cave near Belo Horizonte, Brazil, stunned researchers with her skull's features. Unlike the typical cranial structures seen in Native American or East Asian populations, Luzia's skull was elongated and bore a striking resemblance to the features of indigenous Australians and African populations. For decades, anthropologists debated whether her appearance reflected an early wave of non-Mongoloid people into the Americas. But without DNA, it was speculation. Now, that speculation has genetic weight behind it. Studies show that some ancient South American remains carry what scientists call a population Y sigma Y, the word for ancestor in the Tupi language. This population's DNA includes components that are completely absent in modern Native Americans, and the origin of these genes remains a mystery. Equally mysterious is the fact that this population Y seems to have vanished without a trace. There are no known tribes that carry their genetic markers today. No oral traditions that recall their presence, no clear archaeological layers that define their culture. It's as though they simply melted away into history. Some researchers believe they may have been absorbed into larger Native American groups and their unique genes diluted over generations. Others argue they were wiped out by environmental changes, disease, or conflict with later arriving populations. But perhaps the most haunting possibility is this: they were never meant to survive here. They were pioneers from a distant land who arrived too early without the means to thrive, and their entire civilization was swallowed by the forests, deserts, and mountains of the New World. The idea of a separate, unconnected migration into the Americas shakes the very foundation of anthropological consensus. Until recently, the Clovis first theory dominated American archaeology. The idea that the Clovis culture represented the first human presence in the Americas, dating back around 13,000 years. But now, evidence of pre-Clovis cites some dating to 15,000 or even 20,000 years ago is being found across the continents. And with them comes this baffling genetic twist. Not all of these early people were related. Some belong to completely separate human branches. The mystery deepens when you consider that the routes into the Americas were treacherous at best. The ice-free corridor in North America was not passable until about 13,000 years ago. Coastal routes were narrow, unstable, and would have required advanced seafaring skills. If this unknown group made it to the Americas from Oceania, it would imply one thing: someone was crossing oceans long before we believed anyone could. Even more intriguing are comparisons with ancient rock art, oral traditions, and linguistic anomalies. In parts of South America and the Caribbean, there are ancient myths that speak of people from the sea who came with different skin, speech, and way. Some of these oral traditions had been dismissed as metaphors, symbolic tales. But viewed through the lens of this genetic discovery, they suddenly take on a new meaning. Could these be fading memories of a lost population? One whose genes and bodies evolved but vanished, but whose presence left whispers in the cultural memory of surviving peoples to the trained eye. There are subtle hints across the Americas sites with unusual burial customs, tools that don't match known Native American traditions, even linguistic structures that seem to diverge from expected patterns. But without direct connections, these remain tantalizing fragments. And the clock is ticking. As climate change, looting, and urban expansion erase ancient sites faster than we can study them, the chance to uncover more about this mysterious group grows slimmer every year. Yet scientists remain hopeful. Advanced DNA extraction techniques are now allowing for usable genomes to be recovered from increasingly degraded samples. New finds are constantly being sequenced, and as the global database of ancient DNA grows, researchers may eventually trace the full journey of this lost population from their point of origin to their final disappearance. Some speculate that there may be more than one ghost population, perhaps. Multiple forgotten migrations erased by time and replaced by newer ways. The early peopling of the Americas may not have been a single event, but a chaotic symphony of each wave leaving behind fragments of their story in bones, tools, and now DNA. And the most incredible part, we're only just beginning to hear the faint echoes of that symphony. There's also a philosophical weight to this discovery. We often think of history as a linear chain of inheritance. One group leads to another. Cultures evolve, and we draw clear lines between past and present. But what if history is far messier? What if whole peoples, with their own languages, myths, and dreams, can live, thrive, and vanish, leaving behind only the faintest genetic footprint? The discovery of this ancient, unrelated lineage in the Americas challenges more than just scientific consensus. It challenges our very sense of identity. Who belongs where? What defines a people? And how many stories have already been lost because we weren't looking in the right place? For many indigenous groups today, the idea of unknown ancestors sharing their land long before the modern era is both fascinating and spiritually resonant. Some welcome the findings as a reminder that the Earth holds many secrets and that the story of life on this planet is far more interconnected than we know. Others urge caution, wary that such revelations could be used to challenge land rights or undermine centuries of hard-won recognition. But scientists are clear this discovery doesn't change the status of Native Americans as the rightful indigenous peoples of the continent. Rather, it enriches the story of humanity. It tells us that the Americas have always been a place of movement, of mystery, of lost civilizations and buried truths. And so we are left with an enigma. A people who should not have been here, but what? A lineage unrelated to anyone alive today who traveled across unimaginable distances, lived, died, and vanished. Their DNA is the only voice left, speaking from ancient bones, buried deep in forgotten soil. It whispers a story we are only beginning to understand. A story of humanity's relentless push into the unknown. A story of discovery, disappearance, and the haunting traces of those who came before us and were lost.